Good luck. Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Beyond the South Stand with me, Jez Davies. I am, of course, joined with my illustrious co-host Morgan Hewitt. Hi Morgan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm a little bit warm.
It is warm today.
Been a pretty huge, stuffy few days, but other than that, I'm good.
Good. So I'm going to pass over to you, Morgan, today to introduce our guest, as you know about him much more than I do. So please, obviously, introduce our guest today, and let's go from there.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm going to preface the intro to Joey. So a couple of weeks ago, by the time this goes out, it was my birthday, and a good friend that keeps getting mentioned on this podcast called Woody got me Joey's book, which obviously talks a bit more about a link between sort of politics and football shirts. So I'm very excited to have Joey on the podcast, and if you'd like to introduce yourself, Joey, a bit better than I have, that would be great.
Yeah, well, Woody's clearly a man of great taste. I suppose I'm a journalist, author now, I can say. I work for The Times. I'm a data journalist. Before that, I worked at The Athletic. And yeah, my first book is More Than a Shirt, How Football Shirts Explain Global Politics, Money and Power. Excellent.
So I guess without further ado, Jez, do you want to jump into questions?
Yeah, of course. Joey, so obviously we were chatting on Instagram as we have been most this week. You mentioned you're a Villa fan. So perhaps if you'd just like to talk us through perhaps one of your earliest memories of supporting that fine football club, and perhaps how you came to become a Villa fan in the first place.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Birmingham, a few miles down the road, so I never really was given much of a choice. I've been going since I was however old I was, like 4 or whatever. And yeah, I talk about one of the first shirts I had in my book, which was a 2002-03 shirt. So I was about 10 at the time, and it had Rover on it, and MG on the away shirt. And for me, that tells a sort of bigger story, because Rover basically went bust 3 years later. And I remember I grew up sort of about 3 miles away from the Longbridge factory, which is a really famous, huge car factory in Birmingham. And I used to play sort of football around there, and a lot of the kids, their dads or parents worked there. And it all came crashing down in 2005. And the fundamental reason is it's cheaper to make cars in Asia or Eastern Europe than it is in the UK. So it's quite a sort of sad story about Britain's industrial decline, told through that football shirt, which obviously I wasn't thinking about at the time. I mean, I guess you've got Lotus, haven't you, in Norwich? It's a sort of more of a luxury car. Yeah, that's for a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, we had them as a sponsor, and as you mentioned, they got an office, a factory in, where is it, Morgan, Mulbarton Way, is it, something like that?
Mulbarton, and they were sponsored back in, was it under Worthington, Jez? And then
there was that, but then obviously more recently as well, wasn't it, when we had the BK8 fiasco, which
that gets mentioned in the book. I mean, Villa had BK8 in the 23, 24. They say they cleaned up their act, but yeah, I mean, the hot dog saga.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And I'll probably go into it later on, but it was quite funny actually, I think, how that played out. But no, I think that Rover shirt, I do, when you were talking about the 2003 season, I thought, is it the Rover shirt? And I'm just thinking of the sort of players that would have been playing that shirt. Dion Dublin, I would have thought.
Dion Dublin, Darius Vassell, Juan Pablo Angel. Yeah, not a great team, to be honest, but an all right one. Mid-table.
No. And I think,
the numbers.
And I mean, I've got the fortune of working. One of our sites is really close to Villa's ground, so I know a lot of the fans, a passionate fan base. But you've also got a big tyre factory as well there, haven't you?
Right.
Which would have linked in quite nicely to the car industry as well there.
Well, there's a lot, because it's just on that sort of M6, the box, isn't it? It's so close to get to almost anywhere in the country from there. There's loads of logistics and factories, and obviously the motor industry is what made Birmingham, certainly in the 20th century, was the big industry, and that's all massively fallen into decline. There's still a lot of stuff, sort of parts, and you say like tyres, like small stuff that's less glamorous than making a whole car, but the supply chain, there's still. I mean, I've got a friend who works at JLR, Jaguar Land Rover in Solihull. But that's a smaller operation than like the big Rover factory was. But I think, like not so long ago, in English football shirts, you'd see the local industry sort of told through those shirts. Was Coleman's Mustard? Am I making that up?
Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't just a sort of association with the colour. So presumably that's local.
Yeah, they've actually literally a 5-minute walk from the ground, Morgan.
Right.
It was, yeah, and obviously it's owned by a bigger company now, and I think they've moved it to Ireland, haven't they, Jez? I can't remember. Something like that.
Indeed. So what's your level of sport these days, Joey? Do you still go and watch?
I go a lot. Yeah, a lot. Annoyingly, I'm not going to go a lot. You know, I'm day overseas and sort of air once when I can. I go to probably went like 10 times last season, maybe. So yeah, regular, even though London now. Yeah, what are you? Presumably you guys are what, season tickets?
I have, yeah. They are sitting in the upper Barclay, which is the stand. I don't know if you can see the stand behind where we are. I'm literally, my head is where I would usually sit, funny enough. So my head's probably that big in real life. That's probably to scale. So yeah.
You're like omnipotent, looking over the ground. I go as and when I can. And Jez obviously is the same because he lives out of Norfolk. So yeah. Have we still got Joey?
Which is one I've never been to, actually. I've done much of the 92. Don't know. I think I sat down to count once, and I was in the 40s somewhere. But no, Carrow Road is one I've never been to.
Really?
You're always welcome.
Yeah.
Always welcome, sir.
Yeah, I'd love to go. I mean, yeah, it's just, I guess it's not, I have been to Norwich on a family holiday to that north coast of Norfolk as a kid, but yeah, never been to Carrow Road.
Yeah, you need to get yourself down there. Were you at the Villa ground when Norwich won the league in 1819? You gave us the guard of honor.
Yeah, I don't think I was. That was when we got promoted through the playoffs. I do remember that. And did it go down to the last day? And was it Brighton? No, that would have been a couple of years earlier.
It was us Sheffield United. It was us and Sheffield United, and then you went and played Leeds in the playoffs, and it was that weird thing that what was his name?
Bielsa. No, that wasn't in the playoffs. That was in the ordinary league before. We beat West Brom on penalties, and then Derby County in the final. Frank Lampard's Derby 2-1. And that was a proper sort of sliding doors moment because whoever lost that was going to fall into financial disaster. Luckily it wasn't us.
Yeah, I love that. Jez loves that saying, don't you? Sliding doors moment. So I always bring it up on this podcast. Anyway, I suppose sort of drawing on like in retrospect, was it the relegation of 15-16 because you went down with Norwich. And Newcastle,
God, I sort of blanked out a lot of that. That was a real low point. Yeah. But I suppose you guys have had a few of those just disastrous Premier League seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to talk to us about that sort of season, the Dr Xia takeover, which is still to my mind just one of the most bizarre takeovers of recent football history, and obviously the return of Villa back to the Premier League. It's quite a lot to go through, but I'm really keen to kind of get your handle on things.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think the funny thing about the 15-16 was it was the end of about 6 years of slow downhill. It wasn't like a sudden terrible season. It was like it was feeling. There were actually, I think Christian Benteke kind of single-handedly saved Villa from relegation about 2 or 3 times even. And when it came, it felt it was awful. It was like lost 10 in a row at one point. It was like, I suppose I don't have to talk to you guys to know about what that feels like. But yeah, it was really a real low point. And then the second season was just as dismal. I mean, they spent huge amounts of money and came 13th in the Championship.
That's right.
And then the following year, before the takeover, that was like John Terry came in, Steve Bruce, and lost a playoff final against Fulham. And then basically like put all the money on it was like in the casino they'd bet on promotion big time and they didn't get it, and there was a 4 million tax bill from HMRC in the summer of 2018, and it looked really hairy for a week or two, and then suddenly and they're about to sell Jack Grealish to Tottenham for like 3 million quid, a complete knockdown price, and they were going to be forced to pay off the debt, and then these American guys that no one ever heard of just came out of nowhere, bought the club, paid off the debt, gave Jack Grealish a new contract, and like the rest is history, I guess. Yeah, that was, got promoted the following season, stayed in the Premier League thanks to a bit of goal line technology, and then Yeah, it's been pretty good since then. Yeah.
It's funny, Joey, because I saw a Villa fan on X yesterday saying, "Oh, you know, this decision against Man United cost us when." But I can't remember the goalkeeper's name. Turkish fella that plays for Man United.
Yeah, I mean that was a terrible decision. Yeah,
it was an awful decision, and it should have been a goal. And he's like, "Oh, if we'd scored this, we'd have been Champions League and all of this." And I'm like, "Well, actually, if we rewind 5 seasons, it's crazy, isn't it? I don't what was going because that was during the COVID season as well, wasn't it? I just wonder if they didn't switch it on."
I think there was never there's been multiple articles written about it since. I don't think anyone's ever given a good reason. You know, the technology just malfunctioned basically. But if you look at it, he was like a meter over the line. But what Chippy Villa fans would always tell you is there was another complete howler that season, which was at Crystal Palace away, when I think it was a draw and Villa scored in the last minute, and there's a completely inexplicable. Grealish was given a book for diving, and it was like mad, and so that would have been an extra 2 points or whatever. So that's the party line, you know. But I don't know. Yeah, pretty lucky on that.
We had a few of those that season as well. We had Timo Pukki was offside by his left testicle.
Right. Yeah. Where's he now?
He's back in Finland now. He plays for can't remember the name of the team, but he spent some time in America. Was it Minnesota?
Yeah, Minnesota. Yeah, it was.
But he spent a bit of time there. But now he's back in Finland now.
God, for about 2 months just before COVID, he looked like the sort of best player in the Premier League.
Yeah,
you beat Man City, was that right? Man City.
Yeah. Highlight of my Norwich supporting life. That was, I think. It was really incredible.
I think we were doing fine. And again, Joey, at the sliding doors moment, we were playing West Ham, and I think the striker of West Ham at the time took out
Sebastian Haller.
Yes, took out Zimmerman, and our centre back, who was actually really growing into the Premier League at the time. And then after that, I'm pretty sure it was lockdown, wasn't it? We went into lockdown, Jez.
Well, that was about October, I think. But we after that we went on a bit of a bad run. But then we beat Leicester at home, and it was Jamal Lewis that scored.
That's it. Yeah,
a really good goal. We beat Tottenham in the FA Cup, which was about 2 weeks before we went into lockdown, on a penalty shootout. And then after the restart, we just. I mentioned we talked to Stuart Webber, who's one of our sporting directors, a few weeks ago, and we talked about Project Restart. Norwich never restarted really, and I think we were done by the 5 subs rule as well.
That's what to say, because we didn't have squad depth. But I think those, unfortunately for clubs like Norwich, and we might touch on this later. If you don't have the depth and the ability to have that squad depth and money to have that squad depth, then you're in a hiding. You're gonna find yourself struggling, I think.
Definitely.
Just on that, because I fight. I'm so sorry. I get obsessive about weird things. But Dr. Xia, who was he? And where did he come from?
No one really knows. I mean, I wrote about in the book about the Chinese football, and there was a flood of owners: West Brom, Villa, Southampton, Reading. And basically, you go back to 2015, and President Xi of China visits the UK, visits David Cameron, visits Man City, and gets a selfie with Aguero. And he was really into football, well, still is, and he wanted China to become this footballing nation. So all these sort of rich guys in China thought, the way I'll get the ear of the president is by buying up a football club. So there's this huge wave of cash. You remember the league, players like Oscar and Hulk and all these big European players started going there. And basically, COVID was a huge moment. It hit China hard. Obviously the virus started, and it locked down harder and longer than anywhere really, and really authoritarian government. I mean, for example, the Asian one in 2023, so 3 years later, and they cancelled it last minute because of COVID, and Qatar stepped in and did it. So it really hammered China, and it really made China sort of retreat from the world stage, become more inward looking, and they basically gave up on their football project.
Right.
It wasn't really working. Their dream was for the national team to become really good, but they don't have this sort of deeply ingrained culture like we have not just Europe and South America, but all over the world, where kids play football, and it's just not something that people do. And getting in really good Brazilians at the very top doesn't actually make your national team prospects any better. And people just thought, we're throwing too much money down a black hole here. Let's kind of give up, basically. And you've seen it with.
Sorry, Joey. Carry on. I'll interrupt you.
No, I'm saying we've seen like most of these owners have sold up. West Brom, Villa, Reading I think that's gone through, hasn't it? And the whole thing has kind of stopped, really.
No, all I was going to say was they came up with some really bizarre rules in that Chinese league as well, didn't they? The goalkeeper had to be Chinese. Was that right?
Really, I don't remember that. Interesting. Yeah, they always wanted to improve the quality of Chinese players, because their national team has been useless the whole time. I mean, they qualified for the World Cup in 2002. They played against Brazil, and people thought that was the sort of beginning of most populated country in the world and all that. But yeah, it just didn't work.
No, I mean, sort of moving on. I was just conscious of the time. So touching on your career, then, can you, in layman's terms, explain what being an investigations writer for The Athletic means and the trajectory you find yourself on?
Yeah, basically, it means trying to find things out, I suppose. There's a Norwich example that I did the story about the hot dog gate with the BK8, and that involved sort of scouring social media accounts, messaging people. I mean, it's rarely, the skills you use are rarely things that ordinary people wouldn't be able to. It's just being sort of persistent, being dogged, knowing not giving up. Just a lot of it's just getting people on the phone ultimately, and trying to find things out and knowing what you can and can't say legally. I've done some big stories in that world in terms of Asian gambling sponsors in the Premier League, in terms of some of the cryptocurrency sponsors. I've hopefully exposed some wrongdoing, and it's basically it's just not taking no for an answer, I guess.
How have you found that sort of unveiling some of this? I don't want to use the word shady goings on, but I mean,
I'd happily use that phrase. Yeah.
All right. I mean, how have you found it? Is there any backlash or anything like that?
A little bit. When I reported on some of these cryptocurrency companies, I got quite a bit of backlash, but nothing particularly kind of worrying, or I've never been worried for my own safety. I mean, some of these things are so removed. I mean, some of these things are like, I think, linked to organized crime in East Asia. I mean, some of these gambling companies certainly are. I've never had a backlash myself, but I think the real way to uncover stories there would be to go to the Philippines and Vietnam and knock on doors and ask questions. I mean, I actually spoke to one of my bosses about doing that, and they basically said, we don't think it's a good idea, or it's not safe, or you need a lot of on the ground knowledge and contacts and stuff. So I suppose in that sense, there are some bad people at the top of some of these organizations, basically.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And what about your sort of current trajectory? Because it's a hard word to say. From The Athletic and kind of that sort of swell forward, where do you find yourself now?
Yeah, so I'm at the Times now, and I don't report on football on a daily basis. I write about. I'm doing something today on like the European military spending. I'm doing all sorts of things on ULEZ, the low emissions. It can be anything. I still do a bit of sport, but mostly not sport. I suppose the data journalism is using numbers to tell stories, to make charts, to present stories in an interesting way, and that's a huge part of football now. But that's not really my day job. But on the side, I'm constantly writing about football, talking about football.
Talk to us a little bit about the, you talked about ULEZ there. Talk to us a little bit about the Two People car zone in Birmingham and your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't live in Birmingham. I live in London. So my family's all in Birmingham. I don't actually know a lot about it, to be honest. So it's a clean air zone. Tell me.
It's like a bus lane, but you can be in that lane if you've got more than two people in the car. So if you've got one person in the car, you're not allowed in that lane.
Right.
So I think it's just to sort of encourage people to car share if they're commuting.
Right, to get more cars off the road. Yeah. Birmingham's such a car city. I mean, it was like literally it was made on cars, and it's public transport's not very good. It's quite sort of sparse. It's quite like spread out. It's really,
yeah.
I mean, compared to other big English cities, it's so car. And I mean, it's like, it's all well and good to move away from that, but you need the infrastructure in place to give people other options and cycling. And I mean, I was quite lucky because I grew up on the one train line in Birmingham, but for most people, it's not really an option to not use a car.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Sorry,
Go
Morgan,
on, Jez,
carry on.
sorry.
No, after
I
you
was
carry
about
on,
to say,
please.
one of my best friends is from Shirley, and you know, when I'd go up to visit him from London, I was like, it's really hard to get around Birmingham, and you think to yourself, you know, you'd be able to get like tubes or trains places, and it wouldn't be a problem. It would be a hassle, but it's so car centric. It's a bit like Norfolk. If you don't have a car in Norfolk, you're really hogtied. So I mean, again, just kind of moving on because of obviously time. Where do you think football is right now in relation to the challenge of promoted Championship clubs staying in the Premier League? And has there been a shift away from the relationship between the EFL and the Premier League?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem. You know, we've had 2 seasons in a row now where the 3 promoted teams have gone straight back down, and didn't really look competitive. You know, they might have had a few good performances. It didn't ever look like any of them were going to stay up.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Beyond the South Stand with Joey Durso and, of course, Morgan Hewitt. Morgan, just remind us where we were after our short interlude, please.
No worries. So we sort of covered ground with Joey's support of Aston Villa and his sort of career trajectory. So the next question I want to ask you, Joey, is where do you think football is in relation to the challenge of promoted Championship clubs staying in the Premier League? And has there been a real shift away from a relationship between the EFL and the Premier League?
Definitely. And, you know, you guys will know all about parachute payments, these payments that relegated clubs get. And it means there's a huge divide, I think, in the Championship between clubs which have parachute payments and clubs which don't. It also means that, you know, in the Premier League, we've seen in the last couple of seasons, actually, really quite exciting, the sort of gap between the middle and the top has shrunk. So, you know, teams like Man United and Tottenham doing pretty terribly, and teams like, well, Villa, I mean, Newcastle are maybe a special case because of their Saudi ownership, but basically this feeling that sort of almost anyone can be anyone. The exception to that is at the bottom of the league, where you've had a really terrible, I'm sure you guys won't have minded watching Ipswich get relegated, but the last two sets of 3 promoted teams have been pretty awful. And yeah, we've just seen, you know, we're recording this a few days after both Sunderland and Leeds won. So who knows if the season could be different. But the real difficult thing is you've got to look at that sort of lower mid-table in the Premier League, right? Probably teams that you guys were playing against in the Championship not so long ago. Your likes of Bournemouth, Wolves, you know, West Ham. And are they really going to get relegated? Like, of course it's possible. You know, it's possible that any team can get relegated. But those teams are packed with top international players. A team like Bournemouth, you know, they've barely got any fans. We all know that. But they've got 10 years worth of Premier League money, right? So that's like 100 million a year times 10. They've just sold a load of players to the likes of Real Madrid and Liverpool for hundreds of millions of pounds. They've got sitting on this huge pile of cash. You know, if they were struggling in January, say, they could just spend huge amounts of money in a way that a promoted team never could. So of course it's always possible that this time could be different, but I think, and it may well be, you know, I think it's pretty unusual for 3. Hopefully that'll become pretty unusual. Otherwise, the league will become very boring. But I do think there's a real structural problem there.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, go on, carry on. No, after you, please.
I was going to say, I think that the time this episode goes out, we would have had our ex-director of football, sporting director Stuart Webber on the podcast that we put out. We talked about his tenure at Norwich and the 2 promotion tilts that we had, which were incredible over the last six years. It was an absolute pleasure to have him on board and with the work that he did. But when we came up into the Premier League both times, it was just, we spent quite a bit the 2021-22 season. I think we were in the top 10 in Europe at the time. So it's just post COVID, if everyone remembers. But we spent it maybe on the wrong players. I don't know, but we just struggled, and it was just the second half of the season was just was just that second time was just, it was just really hard. And I think that, the work that Webber did, Stuart did, was incredible. But I think even you look back, that's 4 years ago now, or 5 years ago now, and the gap, the jump between the Championship and the Premier League is just so great. You spend 150 million like Ipswich did, or whatever it was, and they still struggled. So where does it go from here? I think, and that for me is the main concern. Like, where does it go? Because it's unsustainable, surely, for Championship sides to keep spending that kind of money, getting relegated, and then trying that again. Because then what happens to the Championship is it starts to then fragment as well as, and like, I think we see that now. Like, the Championship is certainly fragmented. Like, we've been lucky in so much that we've been taken over by an American owner, and we've had money to spend that we maybe didn't have before. But where does it stop, I suppose? And I'll throw that over to Jez. What's your opinion?
Well, I think what I was going to say is I think the 3 teams that are in the relegation zone now will be the 3 that go. We might as well stop this season now. I think it will be
in the Championship.
In the Premier League. I think Wolves' luck has run out. I think West Ham are just really struggling, and Burnley will be the ones that that were promoted. So I think we've seen as Jerry you alluded to. I think we've seen 2 seasons where the teams that have been promoted have really struggled, but I think Leeds and Sunderland have got enough about them to buck the trend a little bit this year. Plus the fact that how long can these clubs that, as again, as Jerry alluded to, how long can they have this? Luck's probably the wrong word to use, but at some point there's going to be clubs that have that sort of mentality, and there's going to be lots of teams that aren't going to fancy going to the stadium like this season. I know they played West Ham, but did you see that atmosphere? And that they'll keep that up the whole season, and they only really need probably 10 wins.
A few draws, yeah.
Exactly. So I think Sunderland will be all right, and Leeds the same. Ellen Road's such a cauldron, isn't it? And I think they've invested well. I think they might just be 1 striker short, if I'm being honest. But Farke, we know about Farke. They talked about it on Sky Sports on Monday about how we didn't really give him the tools that he needed to go into battle in the Premier League. Well, Leeds have, and this is now his 3rd season as a Premier League manager, and let's see how he does now. He's been backed in the transfer market, right? So no, I think that's the point I was going to make, is the fact that I do think that if, funnily enough, I think it'll be the 3 teams that are there now. I don't know what you think, Joey, whether Wolves and West Ham have got enough about them to get out of it.
Well, I mean, I kind of want that to be true, because the Premier League gets incredibly boring if the same teams. But I just think, look at players like, I don't know, Lucas Paquetá and Jarrod Bowen, and all right, they might have been rubbish on Saturday, but that's so much better than any player in either Sunderland or Leeds. That when it comes to January and there's some injuries and you need someone to get you a late goal in a tricky away game, I just think they're so far and ahead the promoted teams. But who knows? Maybe that's wrong. I mean, I think one thing which you mentioned earlier with Norwich was maybe the start of this shift towards you get promoted and you have to spend £100 million, £150 million. And if you don't, you're just going straight back down. And Championship players just cannot compete, really. I mean, with some exceptions, they're just not good enough. And I think fans almost recognise that now. And I think, certainly when Villa got promoted into 2019, they did the same thing. And there's this talk of doing a Fulham, which was, I think Fulham the year before had spent crazy money, and none of the players had gelled and they went straight back down. And then it became sort of, you want to keep your core from the Championship and add a bit of quality. And I think maybe everyone recognises now that's not. I think Sunderland had maybe 3 players in their starting lineup who had played in the Championship, and obviously you'd hope. And Villa have Tyrone Mings and John McGinn who are still around and playing in the Champions League, and that's great when it does happen. But you basically need to replace the vast majority of the team, because the level is just so much higher.
Yeah, different class, isn't it? And I think that probably leads in quite nicely to the next question then. So I mean, what what do you think can be done to change the football pyramid for a positive to help those lower league clubs?
Yeah,
and then
well, I think
stop them falling into liquidation, like the ones really low, a bit like what happened at Morecambe the other week.
yeah. Well, I think one thing, I mean, there's all this stuff going on at the moment, the football regulator and spreading the money more evenly through the pyramid. I think one specific thing around promotion is that I think promoted clubs should be. I think you're allowed to lose 105 million over 3 years, and that hasn't changed with inflation in about 5 years. So that should be far higher. And teams are really up against it, trying to meet that. And I think any team that has gone up and stayed up has basically lost a lot of money on the first season. You know, it's like you're investing in a new team, and then and any team, Villa, Forest, teams that have done that very successfully, that's exactly what they've done. So I think that threshold should be higher. As for lower down, I mean, it's the bleak truth is that, like, you know, running a football club isn't profitable for most people. So it's really hard to know what, you know, a team like Sheffield Wednesday, they've been so badly run. They've got a terrible owner. You know, I suppose can the regulator do something to basically push someone into selling the club if they're not meeting certain, you know, basic stuff like keeping all 4 stands open, like engaging with fans, like being like that. He's just like rude to people on email, isn't he? He's getting a terrible bloke. I mean, I think Morecambe, as we speak, it looks like it's been saved, which is great news. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday is the one that really worries me because that's not a cheap thing to buy or take over, and the ground's in a complete state of disrepair.
Yeah, I mean, they're an established EFL club. Well, I mean, historically, I think it would be a real shame if anything like catastrophic happened to them, just because of, you know, where they stand in world football. But surely I suppose, you know, surely there needs to be more regulation, like stricter ownership rules. But at the moment, again, like, you know, it's tricky to say because there's a lot of I don't know about your perspective on this, Joey, but like there seems to be a lot of like American ownership now, and I'm interested as to hear your thoughts on that as well. Like, why do you think there is so much interest from the States in the UK football?
I think it's a good question. I think part of it is there is this general excitement about football at the moment in the US. You know, you've got obviously things like Wrexham and Ted Lasso, but also, you know, Beckham in Miami and Messi, and we've got the World Cup in 2026. And I think it's growing really quickly. And I was in New York a few months ago, and it's just way bigger than it's. And I've been there quite a few times. You see football shirts everywhere. People talk to you about it. It's just really on a huge growth. And they basically think the rights are undervalued. They think TV revenue, people should be paying more for TV revenue, for sponsorship, and that these clubs are not run like hard-nosed professional organisations. They're run like sort of, you know, which you can kind of see the downside to some of what I'm saying. But they basically think English football clubs, particularly in the Premier League, are kind of leaving money on the table, right? They've got the biggest product in the world, the biggest cultural product in the world by far, and the annual revenues are like, you know, 100 million, a couple of 100 million for lower Premier League teams, which they think, you know, and a rubbish NFL team will have 10 times that. They're much more aggressive in their marketing. I mean, the main reason for that is that America is a bigger, richer country, but they basically think that football's not making it. They think it's a business game, right? They're not in it for the love or for the because they grew up watching Norwich City or whatever. You know, they're in it to make money, and that's not always a bad thing, because the best way to make money as a football club is by winning more games and getting promoted and winning trophies and getting more fans and getting bigger sponsors, you know. So it's not trying to make, you know, like, I mean, I think the Liverpool owners are a pretty good example of financially motivated owners. They're investors, and they will make a hell of a lot of money whenever they sell the club, because they've run it pretty well since 2010 and made it into a much bigger global entity by winning loads of stuff. But there are downsides to that, and, you know, putting prices up, being obsessed with the commercial side of things at the expense of the community and whatever else. So, but we're certainly going into football much run as a sort of hard-nosed, profit-driven thing now.
I mean, like, with regards to the NFL, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on it. I don't profess to be. Jez, you probably don't know much about it either. But with the NFL, obviously, there is no relegation, And there's that draft pick, isn't there? Like if you finish bottom of whatever, you then get the following season, you get the draft pick. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's like communism, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
It's how it works. It's like as if whoever Ipswich or whoever got the first pick of Eze or whoever the most in-demand player is for next season. Yeah, it's so different to how our football works.
But I mean, so my question is, if it goes into that arena where you have a lot more money, but our rules stay the same, you're effectively creating a disparity between the haves and have-nots, and that's what we're seeing in the Premier League and Championship, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the gap really between a tiny number of clubs at the very top of the Premier League and everyone else is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. These are sort of big international mega brands, and everyone else isn't. Even Villa or as I said, Newcastle is a special case because of the Saudis, but West Ham or Everton or whatever is in a different category to those 5 or 6 who have revenues pushing just massive global institutions. So I think that is the key divide that's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, I think.
Yeah. I guess we're sort of going off on a bit of a tangent, but that's what we love about this. The Super League that's still kind of in the ether somewhere. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, does that I know that what they're saying is that they want to have a Super League as well as the Premier League and keep the big clubs in both. But I think a lot of fans seem to think that it would be better if those top 4, top 5 went off into their Super League and left the Premier League. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Well, one quite interesting thing, Matt Slater, who works at The Athletic, wrote an interesting thing the other day, and he's very well connected, saying that one potential direction of travel is a sort of smaller Premier League. So you have 16 or 18 teams, and then almost like a Premier League 2, which the theory is that could be in everyone's interest because the biggest teams, you have fewer games, you have more time for Club World Cups and European games. And then this sort of Premier League 2 could potentially be better for a team like Norwich because you're playing bigger teams. There's more international interest, there's more money in it. I mean, who knows? But that's the bigger teams want fewer domestic games. Basically, they think they view it as a chore. Why are we playing Sunderland? Why don't we play? We haven't played Real Madrid for 5 years. Why are we playing Sunderland twice? And that's what a waste of leaving money on the table. That's the way they view it from a purely financial perspective. So the sort of Super League, and it's the way it was conceived so disastrously 4 years ago, and the reaction was so intense, so vociferously opposed to it. I can't imagine anything that looks the same being proposed again, but I can certainly imagine elements of it that involve fewer domestic games, more games against European opponents, less of these sort of less glamorous, Carabao Cup and games against Sunderland or whatever else. They want less of that, and they want more Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah, understandably in a way. Jez, I'm going to throw this over to you, given that you're a fan of Norwich. I just off the cuff of what Joey said, like right here and now, I kind of feel that potential would be more interesting to me. But then at the same time, what happens when you have those domestic games where you do beat Man City 3-2 at Carrow Road? You then lose that potential giant killing upset.
I think it devalues the Premier League if you remove those 5 teams. Personally, I think it wouldn't be the spectacle that it is if you then take out the biggest assets of that league. And you're right. It's great seeing the likes of Norwich a few years ago beat Man City at home, and there's been countless examples of that down the years. I think Bournemouth picks up a really good result against one of the big teams.
Liverpool, I think it was,
yeah. And Forest. Look at Forest last year. I think that how close were they to to Champions League qualification, and maybe two or three games that they, even if they'd won one more game, I think they would have been in the Champions League. So I think if it then kind of devalues it, because if they did that when the big teams weren't there, it'd be like, well, they should be doing that because there's 4 or 5 teams in here that you'd be shifting up a little bit. And it's like, I don't know. I think over time it would probably even itself out, but I think it's funny that you said about the Premier League too, Jerry, because actually that was going to be my point about 10 minutes ago. Is that is a possible solution to this kind of this point about the clubs that get promoted from the Championship get relegated straight away. Well, actually, then if you do have a Premier League too, then you kind of have a little bit more money.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. There is a bit more money sort of floating around, isn't there, within those leagues rather than it just being the Championship. But no, that was a bit long-winded. Apologies, but
No, you're totally right. And I think another sort of similar thing has come up with League Cup matches, and people say, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if those European teams were taken out of it and you just had a League Cup that was all then?" So then Norwich would have a much better chance of winning it. The problem with that argument is then no one would pay for the TV rights because people want to, and it's always really annoying when you get the FA Cup third round draw and people, and it's Liverpool against West Ham who played against each other 2 weeks ago and are playing again in 3 months' time, and you've got, I don't know, Norwich, Ipswich. A classic would be a League Two team against Villa, a proper giant killing potential or something which might not get shown.
Yeah,
or a non-league team against Norwich.
No, exactly that.
But you'll get advertisers will pay more for Liverpool West Ham because more people will watch that, because you've got lots of kids who support Liverpool who never go to matches, who don't necessarily have Sky TV, and if they're on BBC One, it'll get a huge audience. If it's Tamworth against Norwich, you'll get a smaller audience, and that's not what I'd like to see, and not the match I'd rather watch. But it's bluntly true, and that's why taking those big teams out isn't necessarily good for smaller teams.
No, I don't think so. And I think, touching on the FA Cup, I would, and this is something I've thought about for the last 2 or 3 years. I would turn it into a Champions League format, the old Champions League format. So have groups of 4 when you get to round 3, for instance, and then they play each other once. It's just a bit like when they used to do that with the EFL Trophy,
just a straight knockout.
Yeah, so literally there'll be groups of 4, and it'll be like the old Champions League essentially. And then once it gets to the final stage of that, the top 2 go through to the knockout. It just gives, say for instance, like Tamworth, for instance, if they qualify for round 3, they could be put into a group with, I don't know, a Premier League club, a Championship club, and maybe another qualifier from there. And then they get the opportunity to have 3 games against higher opposition. I just think it would make it more interesting.
I agree, but given that they've just binned replays, I don't think they're going to be any appetite for more games.
But that's the thing, because if you did it in the sense of that knockout format, it might potentially be less, because you could have, it would still be the amount of games. It's just you don't have round 3, 4, 5. You have game week 1, game week 2, game week 3, and then obviously the quarterfinal would be the quarterfinal stage as is. So it's still the same amount of games.
Right, let's to the FA.
I might do it. Yeah, 100%.
We're actually going to send this episode to the FA. No,
right.
We're not. So I think time to move on to the next question. So can you talk to us at a high level about your book, More Than a Shirt? So briefly unpack the themes that run throughout it and what it means, in relation to global football.
Yes, the big idea is that a football shirt can explain anything, be that the politics of the Middle East, the war in Ukraine, the rise of China, and I've looked at 20 different shirts all over the world. I've been to 5 different continents. Wow. And interviewed people, and been to matches and interviewed people behind the scenes to try and tell these stories. Chapter 1 is about Gazprom and Schalke in Germany. Move on to sort of Newcastle and the Saudis, PSG, Qatar, and some really obscure ones as well you might not have heard of. Like there's a Colombian shirt with a dead gangster's face on the back of it, because it was a guy who was murdered who owned a football team, and he was on the back of it. So just, I suppose that what I want people to take away from it is that if you're playing football in the park, or any football shirt can tell a bigger story, basically, about politics, about power, economics, whatever else.
Yeah, I think we touched upon it in part 1, but I think you mentioned Villa. Was it Rover?
The Rover, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it was sort of about that time period of Birmingham, and it's sort of, I guess, the industry that was kind of there at that time. I think that's really interesting. Like, we talked about sponsors, we talked about Coleman's, Coleman's Mustard, who are on Norwich.
What's the current sponsor of Norwich this season?
Actually, it's a really interesting one, and we really want to talk to them about it. So if you're listening, Blakely, so they are a fashion brand formed actually in the very heart of Norfolk, a place called Melton, and owned by Jack. I can't remember his name. I should probably know that. But so Blakely, a fashion brand currently, which is interesting because I don't think we've ever had. Have we ever had a fashion brand on it, Jez?
Well, we had Bruce Oldfield, didn't we? He designed the Coleman's Mustard original shirts. But no, I don't think we have, and I don't think there's many clubs that have. I think Villa did at one point, didn't they? They had, was it whoever it was, but we had Asics as well. Famously. But no, I think it's interesting. I mean, Blakely, if you walk down any high street in the UK, every other woman's wearing a Blakely hoodie. And they're the ones that are massively oversized, and they've got Blakely written across the back in big white letters. They're really popular. I don't see a lot of men wearing it, but there's a lot of women walking down the high street in any sort of town. You'll see it all the time now.
Yeah,
now I've said it, but it's they're really, really popular. I think they're it's quite sustainable brand, aren't they, Morgan? From memory.
Yeah, from what I
so yeah, sort of aligns quite nicely. We were at Carrow Road yesterday, and every it's just everywhere. You can just see it everywhere. So it's it's a really sort of strong brand image. So but no, I think it's interesting you said about Gazprom, Joey, because I always remember about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe before 4 or 5 years ago, before the war in Ukraine, Gazprom featured heavily on all of the adverts for every single Champions League game. Yeah, it was like they were like Christmas adverts, but they'd play it in the middle of April. It's like
with a kid warming himself by a Gazprom flame. Yeah, it was a bit odd. Yeah,
someone playing the piano, I think, from memory, and all of that. So,
but Gazprom is basically part of Putin's war machine in Ukraine now. I mean, it looks pretty terrible looking back on it.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So, is it your question now, isn't it?
Well, it is. I don't know if Joey had anything else to add about the book. I mean, where can people people buy it?
Cheers. Yeah, I mean, if you just type it into Google, More Than a Shirt, it'll come up. It's on Amazon, Waterstones, all of those. And I'd be very happy if people did.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get my signed copy from you, sir.
Absolutely, anytime. Yeah. It's my first one, so it's a real thrill signing copies.
I'm really like I said in part one. My friend bought it for me for a birthday gift, and I was like, I started to like just kind of I obviously I didn't know anything about it. Started looking, started reading the introduction. And I was like, he's gone and pulled out a real winner. And I said to Jez, I was like, oh, we should kind of try and get this author on, and here you are. So
here I am. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. I did not.
Pleasure. I'll talk about it to anyone. I'm not hard to track down. So yeah.
Excellent. So finally, before we will do a random question of the week, we did question as to whether we were going to do this or not, but Morgan does a what we like to call Morgan's random question of the week. So please mentally and physically prepare yourself.
Okay, I'll prepare myself. Yeah.
Good. Last question from me. Do you think a centralised national community football initiative could work in helping to support grassroots football in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, does that exist through the FA already? Is that something I don't quite understand? Is that something you're involved in? What do you mean?
I'm involved with. So, it's something we're looking as a podcast to get actively involved with this season, and highlight some of the, I wouldn't want to use the word deficiencies, but deficiencies that in the non-league game. But I guess the question here is, could there be anything sort of centralised with the local FAs, or whether it be the local FAs or national FAs, that would help these grassroots clubs? Do you have any ideas on that, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they could. And then the FA's remit is not just running the FA Cup; it's right down to the very, very grassroots level. And I think they have a lot of expertise. They have a fair bit of money. I'm sure they could play a bigger role in the stuff that you mentioned.
I mean, I think that something we've had conversations about is like, and it's weird. We were at, I don't want to seem like we're blowing our own trumpet, but we were at Carrow Road yesterday and we were talking to the media, Dan Holker, the media lead there, about like how fan media is kind of growing and going and sort of taking away almost a little bit from traditional journalism, national journalism. You'll see my point. I'm going to try and make in a second, but I think that I think conversations I've had with people is, if that's the case, then where is should there be more engagement with like grassroots kind of media, podcast channels like ourselves, who are trying to kind of get involved more with the community?
So what stuff like access and player interviews and that sort of thing?
Yeah, and also funding, because I had this conversation with someone else the other day, like, me and Jez, we've got some ideas about what we want to do with this, but we can't do it without money.
Yeah, of course.
But we're going to have to talk to probably the Arts Council to do so,
right?
Because there isn't anything on offer from FA or the EFL for stuff like this. So that's kind of, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think there's an extent to which it's kind of mutually beneficial. It helps the club, it helps the FAs, is publicity. I suppose you've always got that issue of impartiality, sort of independence, haven't you? If you're funded by someone and you're then going to criticise them. But no, I think you make a good point, and I think the people are increasingly realising this fan media is, you saw the other day with Mark Goldbridge getting the Bundesliga rights. I mean, like, this stuff is big, and whether you like it or not, it's and traditional media, and particularly local media, has had a terrible 20 years or so. And the barriers to entry of fan channels are pretty low, right? You just need a pair of headphones and a computer that you probably already own. So, and there's so much out there, and I think it's there's a lot to be negative and pessimistic about English football at the moment, but I think the sort of fan media stuff is pretty exciting and interesting, and it's much easier for fans to have a voice now. I think 30 years ago you'd have just
I mean, this is kind of like, I guess, my sort of point. Like, if you have a more kind of, if there was something in place to support grassroots fan media outlets that are trying to do, trying to signpost, trying to do more in the community, grassroots particularly, is it not then creating a more positive footballing community nationally, is kind of, I suppose, my question. Jez, what do you think?
Well, it's funny because I went to watch Hitchin Town on Saturday, and it's probably the first and the only FA Cup game that I'm going to be seeing live this season, unless Norwich get a big team. And they drew against Grays Athletic and equalised in the 94th minute or whatever it was, and they actually won the replay last night. But the point I was going to get to there is they had 500 there. So, the point that I'm struggling to get to here, basically, could there be an incentive for a club like Hitchin, where an Arsenal or a Tottenham that's on the doorstep say to their fans, well, Arsenal were away on Sunday. Yeah. So could you say to all the fans that live in the North Hertfordshire area, or even just Hertfordshire, go and support your non-league club. We'll subsidise your ticket. So the club gets the money, Hitchin Town get the money. They go and watch football on a Saturday, and it gives Hitchin more fans. It gives the fan another form of the game to go and watch, and it just brings everyone together. So, I mean, I think that would be, when we talk about community incentives, that, it just helps everyone. And perhaps other than Arsenal that have to give away a bit of money, but surely then, they could then become a partner club. I don't know. Perhaps I'm looking too much into it.
No, I think, and a lot of non-league attendance has done pretty well in the last 10, 20 years. And I think a big reason for that is that the Premier League is now so sort of remote and expensive and difficult to get tickets for, that you might support Arsenal and Hitchin Town. And lots of people probably, see a non-league team maybe when their Premier League team is away, or maybe they never go to see their Premier League team because they can't get a ticket. So I think it's often viewed in sort of conflict, the two things, and I think actually the two can work together quite nicely. And it's a sort of different product, right? Like obviously watching a Premier League game is amazing and the quality is incredibly high and you see the best players in the world, but you probably can't sit next to your mates. You certainly can't have a drink standing by the pitch.
Exactly.
Can't walk home. So I think they're slightly different products, and I think they can live side by side. And I think weirdly the Premier League success can actually help non-league, as you say.
No, I think so.
Where does that help kind of exist? I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of the politics between the Premier League and grassroots, but from my perspective, it doesn't seem to be like there's much going on. But I could be wrong.
Well, I think.
Sorry, Joe. Carry on.
Well, I think it's probably a bit of a pessimistic view, but I think 20 or 30 years ago there would have been much more of a link, and now. Why is non-league useful to Premier League? That would have been players. It would have been, and that very rarely happens now. If you're a brilliant, you look at the England team now, the vast majority of them would have been in top academies when they were really, really young, like 7 or 8. And you really don't get a lot of players who are playing non-league in their sort of teens and then go into, they might make it a few levels higher, but they very rarely make it sort of very, very top. So yeah, it's not a very optimistic view, but I think maybe there's less of a link or less of a dependency from the very top on non-league than there used to be.
I think it's just a bit of relationship management, isn't it? And I think a club like, I'm going to use Hitchin again because obviously it's the example I used earlier, but there could be like a bit of relationship management there between an Arsenal or a Spurs, perhaps Arsenal because it's on the same train line, where they go, right, so this season we're going to give, I don't know, 50,000 tickets. This might be too many, but say, okay, 10,000 tickets for Hitchin Town games to our fans. We're going to give, I don't know, 5 under 18 players the opportunity to go and play at Hitchin for their development. And we're going to, and then that kind of then builds up with that relationship. Well, we're going to go and give you a friendly against Arsenal under 18s each summer, because then that generates revenue because you're going to get more people come to the ground. So I think it may exist, but I think having that kind of relationship management between those clubs, I think could just be, we talked earlier on about how can the Premier League support non-league football. Well there you go.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree with what you said, yeah.
Right. I think it's time.
Do you want me to do the chair spin as well?
Yeah, you need to do the chair spin, but just before that, because sometimes I forget to ask this, Joey, thank you so much for coming on, both last week and today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. Is there anyone you want to give a little shout out to?
Any Norwich fans? Yeah. My friend Dom's mum, who's called Susie.
Yeah.
Susie Gilchrist, lives in Cornwall. Shout out to Susie. Massive Norwich fan.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Who you expect? What were you expecting? I don't know. I wasn't asking.
You can
Norwich fans in my life.
Just anyone in general, anyone that's helped you along your journey, anyone.
That's all in the back of my book. So yeah, shout out to Susie in Cornwall.
Should I plug your book again?
She lives in the very end of Cornwall. Whatever the furthest west championship games are, Bristol, places like that. She goes to all them, Cardiff. But Norwich is a very long way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We get around, don't we, Jess?
Yeah. Turn that chair around then. Let's have it.
All right. I thought about this for a week, Joey. Right. Random question of the week. You look confused.
Yeah, I am confused.
So, going back to who you support, Aston Villa, famously known as the villains. But who is your favorite fictional villain of all time?
Oh God. I don't know, Voldemort. I'm not really like a comic book guy.
I did wonder if you were going to go.
Must be comics. Be films.
Morgan, I did wonder if you were going to go down the route of sort of Premier League referees with.
Maybe Robbie Savage. I thought that's where you're going. I thought you're going who's your biggest football villain, and that's a face I always gets me out of my chair when I see him on TV. I hate that man. Yeah, Robbie Savage.
Obviously, we've got a link. We've got a link with Robbie Savage through
Of course,
Chris Sutton.
yeah.
Like, I've always wanted to ask Chris Sutton, like, how do you manage? How do you manage?
Well, I remember because he's also, I mean, he was the famous headbutt with Dion Dublin in Villa played Birmingham City for the first time in 20 years, and he riled up. But he now is always a thing that he's always so negative about Villa, and I think he almost does it deliberately. But there was a game, Villa's first European game for decades, or not decades, but a long time. I remember watching it, and Villa were awful. I can't remember who it was against. It was some terrible team, and maybe I can't remember, but Villa were terrible. And Savage was commentating, and he was being so kind of complimentary. It was weird. He'd almost like he'd been told off, and he was on his best behaviour. But it was almost more annoying because he was like, "We're rubbish. Just tell it how it is." And he's like, "Oh well, so and so is playing really well." And it's like someone had a gun to his head. But yeah, I hate Robbie Savage. He's my villain.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Jez, real life or fictional then?
Well, it's the two fictional ones. So the Hood from Thunderbirds.
Oh,
he was just scary. He was just scary, wasn't
he? Yeah, I can't believe I can't believe you came up with that. That's really good. Sorry, Joe. Usually I ask Jez this question and it's just blank or some crap answer, but I'm actually really impressed.
And then Homelander from The Boys. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but he's the most complex. I don't know if you've seen the Boys, Joey, but
no.
It's either Netflix or Amazon. It's on one of those. But if you ever get a chance to watch it, and people that have watched it will know what I'm talking about here, but he's the most complex character I've ever seen. And he actually ironically plays a superhero. So they're all superheroes. There's about 6 of them, I think. One can run really fast. One can go invisible.
Yeah.
This one he's just literally like the best man. He's like sort of like hair slicked back and stuff, and everyone loves him. But he's got this kind of like a really sort of alter ego, I guess. He's just a massive bell end, basically. But he'll do things throughout the whole series. You think, wow, that's just off the chart. So yeah, Homelander for me is. I would recommend researching Homelander because it was.
All right then.
I'll send you some links after this. So yeah, what about you, Morgan?
I've actually tripped myself up on this question because I haven't thought about it whatsoever.
Right.
So typical. I would say I'm going to go for, because I'm just looking at the book now. A big John Carpenter fan. I like his early work, his early films. I love John Carpenter. The Thing. If anyone's seen The Thing.
The Thing, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think I saw that when I was too young, and it scared me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nasty alien creature. I think just trying to survive by assimilating everything. I mean, you could draw parallels with that for many things, but The Thing for me is probably my most hated villain of all time. So there you go.
I'm just about to share you both a video of Homelander, just to get your live reaction. I don't know if I can share on Instagram. Let me have a quick look.
Okay.
Oh, I can't check Instagram because I'm doing it on my phone here. Everything will break.
Okay.
I've just sent you something else, Joey. I've sent you our partnership pact.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, Joey, thanks once again, yeah, keep in touch, and I hope the book goes really well.
Cheers. I'm enjoying it. Thanks for having me.
No, not
good
at
luck.
all.
Good luck for the season, as they say.
Yes, absolutely. You too.
That's always what you say when you meet like a random person on holiday, isn't it? Like you meet like a Stoke fan on the beach, and you're like, "Oh, good luck for the season." Yeah.
You know what? It's funny actually.
Apart from when you play us, yeah.
I was I was on a pirate ship in Turkey over the summer, and as you do, and started speaking to this lad, and he was like, I can't remember his name, but he obviously I always wear my Norwich shirt on holiday, obviously. He saw my Norwich shirt. He goes, "Are you a Norwich fan?" Yeah. He goes, "I'm in the under 21s at Sheffield United."
All right.
And he was a really, really nice lad. Eddie, my 4-year-old boy, he chucked himself off this pirate ship about 10 foot in the air into the sea, obviously, just because he's got no fear. And this lad was like, "Wow, what's your boy's just chucked himself into the sea?" I was like, "Yeah, don't worry, does that all the time." So yeah, it's funny who you meet on holiday, isn't it?
Yeah. Go on then. Do the sign off.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Just for everyone watching, please like and subscribe on our channel. We are available on all Instagram, all Facebook, Instagram, and X channels as well, and all of the podcast stations. I've been Jez Davies.
I've been Morgan Hewitt.
I'm Joey Durso, author of More Than a Shirt. Thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone. Bye.